Hello and welcome back to Nelson All Over Cards. Today I am here with Villain Theory and we are doing another draft to promote the next Shadow of the Cast podcast episode, which should be coming out ideally tomorrow as of the airing of this video. But how are you doing, Villain? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. I'm looking forward to this draft a lot, and I enjoyed the podcast episode a lot, actually.
Yeah, it was a really fun episode. It was a really fun episode. In the podcast, we revisited some of the Guardian characters. I guess actually all of the Guardian characters. We went back and talked about some of the new cards and new strategies that are evolving now that we have more content since that wave. And in order to kind of talk about that and celebrate that, we're doing a draft of Marvel Champions villains, because the Guardians, at least in my mind, are always linked to some really tough villains because they came out with Galaxy's Most Wanted. We figured that that would be a fun tie-in. So today, Villain Theory and I are going to snake draft our top 5 villains. And yeah, I don't really know how we're going to approach this. I think I'm going for more of an all-around team of villains, or like if I could only play these 5 villains for the rest of my life. I think that's how I'm kind of approaching it. I'm curious because we kind of left it a little nebulous on purpose, and that's a little bit up to you as the voter. So at the end of the video, vote on who you think drafted better, on how you want to interpret it. But I that's kind of how I'm thinking, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How did you approach this prompt?
That's interesting. So there is a little bit of variety in mine, but mine are more the ones that I feel really drawn to play. So there's not. Yeah, but there's definitely still variety in this. I've prepared like a top 10 in case you happen to take all five of some of them. So we've got enough. And there's definitely a variety in all the top 10, but I don't know if there's as much variety in my top 5. So that's going to be really, really interesting. And as a player with villains, I love to change up the modular sets, which is going to have like an impact on my list, I think. Whereas a lot of people don't change them so much. I think you change them quite a lot. I remember, if you've watched any streams with Nelson where I've been in the chat, I've made him play some very dangerous modulars.
They're rude. They're rude.
Like
the perfect defense where he gave me Sinister Assault, which only has 3 boost icon villains, or 3 boost icon encounter cards.
What gets worse is you have to realize Nelson was playing against Claw, who gets double boost cards.
Oh, that was a good time.
I had fun.
Excellent. Excellent.
More fun than you did.
I had fun. It's always a good time playing Marvel Champions. Anyways, we are going to be doing a snake draft. That means that it is draft 5. If you have missed the last couple of drafts, you can go find those on the channel. I have a playlist, so I'll link the playlist down below. I was going to say I'll link all the videos, but it's like that's going to get very long after a while. I'll link the playlist. We have started in the last couple to do a snake draft. What that means is that Villain Theory, who drafts first, will take 1 pick, then I will take my first and second pick, and then we will bounce back and forth taking 2 picks at a time until we round it out with with Villain's final pick at number 5. My final pick? My final pick at number 5.
We know how this works.
I get 6 choices. Villain gets 5. It's my little handicap.
I only need 5. It's fine.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, let's just dive right into it. We have got, I think, 45 villains at this point, and the number 1 overall draft pick for the Marvel Champions villains. Villain, take it away. What are you bringing to the table?
So I need to start off first by saying I had a top 18, and it was like agony trying to like narrow it down like to what I wanted here. So there's a lot of cool, strong villains these days, and my list has changed a lot since I did this, before I made videos and stuff. But I've got to go for a classic opening up. I've got to go for none other than Kang. I really like Kang. Now, Kang takes a bit longer than some scenarios, so I don't play him as much as some of the other villains I'm probably going to say. But when I do play him, it's kind of like an epic, kind of clash. I really enjoy the cinematic, different phases, how you move in and out, the replayability, because even the solo play, you're getting a different, second phase, a different, Kang from time. But in multiplayer, you get some really interesting matchups and how that works in joining other play areas. So I just think he hits you with a lot of interesting things. His obligation mechanics kind of interesting as well, the way he does that differently to most villains, and it's awesome.
Yeah, King is such a good pick, especially for multiplayer scenarios. It is still a really fantastic scenario for that solo play because, like we were saying, that stage 2 changes up and you get a lot of replayability there. But I love approaching King in multiplayer where in that second stage everyone gets split up and you're in like these different time zones. We're just gonna hard cut that because I think that was a spoiler. So we're just gonna come right back to it. I think King's a fantastic choice. Still really impressive that some of the earlier villains that we have in this game are still making the top of these lists, as well as heroes and cards. So that's a really cool choice for first. My first choice, I have to go. I've done my favorite Marvel Champions villains. I've done a top all the rankings, and consistently at that top is Hela. I really have to just keep going with Hela. I really like the story feel that Hela provides, where you're progressing through these different levels of hell. You're fighting these giant monsters and taking on these epic side quests in order to go rescue King Odin. Once you do, King Odin joins your forces and you're able to take down the undefeatable Hela, and she gets stronger as you get going, and because you're putting these side schemes in the victory display. I still haven't played Cable against Hela. I do need to do that, but you're putting these side schemes in the victory display, which is powering up Hela. So it has this really nice ramp that is a little bit different than like the standard stage 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 ramp. And Hela just feels like a story that's being told. Again, another longer scenario, but I feel like putting it on the table is definitely just like worth it when we're talking about long scenarios and exciting scenarios to play.
Yeah, I mean, Hela made my top 18, but I will say she actually didn't quite make my top 10. And I have a love-hate relationship with Hela because, people who know, you can kind of gamify it a bit. There's little bits, and there's a lot I like about it, though. Everything you said, the whole story aspect is really cool, and I do enjoy it a lot. And actually put out a video mentioning Hela yesterday, so, I definitely like Hela, but not bad, not bad.
Not bad.
It's like it's all right, passable. No, that was pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like there are so many villains on this list that are quote not bad picks for these top 10, these top 5 that we're going to be taking. There's so many really cool designs, and I'm really happy with the Hela Kang tag team for that first round. Starting out in second round, we are going to go all the way back to the core box. I'm going to take Ultron here. I love Ultron. Ultron is that capstone villain, the third villain in the core box. He has this drone mechanism where he's putting the top card of your deck into play, and you have to take on these like kind of weak drones, but they're annoying because if they take your, the multi-gun, if you're playing Venom, it's like, okay, well now that's my drone answer. That's what I was going to do to kill all my drones, and now it's a drone. And so you have to adapt your play style, and it feels like a scenario that you really want to build for, and you can have like some really epic matchups against Ultron if you're like teching for Ultron. I really want to do Minion Slayer with Hall of Heroes and I can just have a stupid amount of counters. Or it can be a really challenging scenario to try to push those decks, where if you have a deck that you really kind of want to push towards the limit, Expert Ultron is not an easy task, and he just like continues to hit the table. He is one of those that, coming out of some of these early waves, I was like, okay, that's a really interesting mechanic. I'm curious to see how long it's going to hang around, and I think that his staying power is excellent. So number 2 for me is Ultron.
Yeah, Ultron is someone I would say is, I want to give you like some banter, but like, that's all right. No, Ultron was ahead of his time, I think. He feels like a villain that could have been printed in Next Evolution in terms of, design moving parts, interesting ideas, that final stage of the main scheme, the countdown. I wish they did that again, just repeat it. It's good enough. I want more of it. Just such a cool villain. So
really kind of puts like a lot of pressure on you. Ultron stage 3 cannot take damage when drones are in play, so if you have like this whole strategy of ignoring, you can't really do that anymore. Or if you misunderstood the rules and had to refilm a playthrough like me, overkill doesn't work on Ultron stage 3. Oops. I was like, I did a whole video and like I recorded a 2-handed play, and then I was like, I learned that rule like hours after, and I was like, okay, if it was like one mistake, I was like, maybe I'll just keep it. but my entire deck was built around overkill. I was like, I don't think I can do that.
Oh, that's pretty sad.
Oh, oh well. Well, okay. So I'm happy with my first two picks. Villain, you're going to be taking two picks here, and like we talked about in the last draft, this starts to get a little stressful for me because you got two picks coming up. What are you taking?
This is stressful for me because there are 3 picks I want, and I'm worried you're going to take the one I don't, because I think one of the ones I want to go for, you won't go for. So maybe I should leave that till last. But that would be inaccurate.
Strategy here.
I'm gonna buy some time by saying we actually talked about Ultron a little bit with one of the heroes in our podcast. So he's still just very relevant, and I'm gonna have to go for. I'm gonna have to go for some new blood, I think, with Magog. I really like Magog. You know, it's that I didn't know who Magog was. I'm gonna be honest. Before I played, saw Mojo Mania at the pack, I had no idea. But anything which puts you in an arena is gonna be a good time. It's kind of the rule of any kind of game or movie. Arena scenes tend to do pretty well, and you have this awesome showdown. And what I love about it, many things. I think the pacing is really good. It's fast paced, but it's not kind of like Crossbones Drain kind of thing, where they have low HP. It's the villain can also win very quickly. So you've got this really interesting pace going on. The encounter deck is thin, so that means whatever modular set you put in is going to come up more than average. And what's really, really cool is it has unique victory and loss conditions to do with these show counters. I think whatever they're called, you've got to entertain the crowd. Are you entertained? You've got to go for it. And it's just really interesting because the victory and loss conditions are different to normal. Yeah, everything you want to do in a deck still works really well. Defensive characters can defend to reduce the enemy getting counters. The aggressive characters, can, race and get counters that way. Or even forwarding characters can stop the main scheme from going over and then, slow down the villain a lot that way. So everything you want to do works, but the win and loss is different. So it's fascinating to me.
I think Magog is one of the peak designs in this game where they were able to take the core mechanics of the game and make a encounter that feels completely same but different. With Magog, I'm like you. I still have no idea who Magog is, but I love the challenge system. I really enjoy the fact that it really rewards the defensive style play. So any character takes damage from Magog, they're getting these cheering crowds. They're starting to root for Magog, and that's your loss condition. And so you really get rewarded for playing some of these perfect defense builds and stuff like that. So I really enjoy Magog. He's one of those that I like to pull out. He's a brawler, which is always fun, but Magog is an excellent pick. Good one. Nice. I like it.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that pick, but now I've got to pick another one, and there's now I picked one, but still 3 I want to pick, and this is really tough. So hats off to the designers. I'm gonna have to go for a classic. We got to take it back. We got to appreciate where it all began, almost. So
Rhino.
Rhino would be my favorite starting villain in the core set. But aside from that, Rhino can be fun. But I'm talking about a villain from the Green Goblin scenario pack, and that is a mutagen formula. So this is a classic. I think everyone loves this, and it's just got such interesting things going on. It's got tons of minions coming at you, but also side schemes, and all those side schemes interact with the minions. And Green Goblin is cool. He's very, iconic, and it's just a good time. I never play that scenario and think, well, this was boring, or anything like that. And I think it interacts quite well with modular sets as well, which is again always a plus for me. Starts with Goblin Gimmicks, which is got 9 cards in it. That is the recommended one. So you can put in like a 5 and a 5. You can actually double up on the mod sets if you want. You're still hitting the same kind of numbers. So I like to mess around with that, and just a huge fan of it.
Yeah, I'm over here adjusting my list because that's who I was about to take next. So now I'm in panic mode. I was like, there's 45. I'm pretty sure my list is going to be different enough from villains. But no, I mean, Mutagen Formula is the penultimate deck tester, in my opinion. It's got everything. It's got a tough villain. If you're playing on Expert, it hits you. You start going. You start with 2 encounter cards and a Goblin Thrall. There is not much room for breathing there at the beginning. It's got a lot of minions. It's got a lot of side schemes. If you want to test a deck, take it against mutagen formula, and that to me makes it deserve a top 10 spot easy. I think that was, yeah, dang. I'm over here. It's like, okay, crap. Okay, what am I doing now? Because that, I mean, you said everything that I was gonna say. So
I know. I now
good job taking that one over whatever you did not take. But hopefully, I can figure that out. I'm looking at all my villains now off screen to see if I can figure out which one villain's taking, because we all know that my draft style is not necessarily to take the best, but it's also to try and take away picks from villain.
Yeah, you go really tactical with that. I'm still upset about Storm in the first draft. I am still upset.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Storm here for my third. No.
I mean, you taking my picks, I think you're one of the villains, you know.
That's fair. I will take it. I will take it. But
no.
It is my turn to take two. I'm gonna go with my. We're gonna go with Sinister Six here for my third pick. Sinister Six is a multi-villain scenario that came out of the Sinister Motives campaign, where you're fighting off against the Sinister Six, and this is a really cool scenario where you are. The win condition is not to beat the villain. It's more thematically like they are trying to like stop your progress, and you are working on this permanent side scheme to try and get out and like find the light at the end of the tunnel and thwart down. Or you can take out the villains, and if you take out a villain which has lower health pools, you remove threat from that side scheme as well. And so you can have 6 villains out, you can have 1 villain out. There's mechanics that pull these villains out, and then there's an activation order which can be really fun to try and it's almost a mini game of where you want that activation token to be. And it's like, okay, I really don't want Doc Ock to be attacking me because I can't really handle the threat, and you can kind of play around with that. It can be pretty challenging, especially in like expert mode, if you get some bad card draws and you get like, you start with all the villains and then multiple of them are attacking you, and it feels very thematic in a sense that like the Sinister Six is working together to hinder your progress. And I love multi-villain scenarios, and I think that this one does a really good job with it.
Yeah, Sinister Six used to be in my top 10. I've done lists like on Discord and things, and I have put it there, so I really like that scenario. It has dropped out for me, but you know, it's still a fine pick. No, I love the theme. You know, Spider-Man villains. You know, he's got one of the best rogues galleries. Getting to fight multiple of the villains at once is such a cool idea. Still waiting for that Doc Ock scenario pack, but you know.
Oh yeah.
But I really liked that one. It's got really cool, you know, like you say, you know, you got the mini game which villain, but you know, I love that they pop up. It feels dynamic. It changes. The villain, you know, is always, you know, not always, but often going to be different. I like it a lot in multiplayer because you're more likely to get the encounter cards that bring more villains in, and that's cool. One of the reasons I think it dropped out of my top 10 is because I'm going on about modulars a lot, but you cannot really officially modify that one. So that is the big blow against it for me, I think, which is why it's lost some replayability, but it's still an absolutely solid, you know, really good scenario. So I think that's very respectable.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm struggling with these last 2 picks. I think I really wanted mutagen formula in my top 5. So I think I'm trying to find a sub for mutagen formula. I think my next pick is not the sub. I'm going to try and figure out what that sub looks like as you are discussing your final 2 picks. But we're going to just go new stuff. We're going to go brand new Juggernaut. We're going to go the big brawler. We're going to take Juggernaut as my 4th pick. And the reason here is I really like the brawler type of villains. Like Magog, we were talking about a little bit earlier, where it is... you're going up against this villain, and I think with Juggernaut, they just nailed that theme where there is no main scheme cap. Well, I mean, there is, but you don't lose. He just attacks you again, and he's all about attacking you. Yeah, and getting momentum counters. He has overkill. There's a way to turn that off, and you can spend some resources to remove his helmet. He becomes exposed. He takes more damage. He doesn't lose it. He loses stalwart, loses overkill. And so it's this game of how do we keep this helmet off? Because whenever he schemes, it goes back on. How do we keep this helmet off? And because if that helmet comes back on, he's going to be hitting me for, I think, minimum 4 in expert, because he starts with 3 with a momentum counter. And I'm like, that's a lot of damage to try and mitigate and take care of. But it may just be a little bit of the cult of the new, but I have a ton of fun throwing Juggernaut. He's made it into my rotation of villains to take new hero, or to take heroes up when I'm testing them out to see like their survivability, how much punishment can they take before they fall. But Juggernaut is one of those scenarios. I really like the word that you used earlier, dynamic. I don't think it's as dynamic as the Sinister Six, but it feels like there's another little mini game inside the game. And so that's Juggernaut, my fourth pick.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Juggernaut did make my, my now infamous, I feel like, top 18. He's I do love what you talk about the main scheme. It's so dangerous to go over. Like, you can let it go over, but in some ways you really don't want it to, in my opinion.
Right?
That terrifies me, Juggernaut can just, in general, I don't feel like I have too much trouble. I don't feel like it's too difficult, but sometimes he just comes out swinging and it's dangerous. And yeah, he's really fun. So good pick. Is it better than Magog? It's more recent. I do really like Juggernaut, but yeah, the brawlers are fun. The brawlers are good fun.
The brawlers are really good, and I feel like they have figured out how to design them so that they feel fun, interesting, and not just straightforward. Because I feel like it's really easy to fall into a trap of making a brawler feel just like very non-mechanically interesting. And I feel like they have figured out their formula for brawlers.
Yeah. Now I've got a pick, right?
Yep. You get 2 picks. You're finishing off your draft. You're finishing off your top 5 villains. Let's see how that goes.
I've got 2 in mind, which I think works out pretty well. I'm gonna stick with these. So which order? What's gonna be the best order here? Okay. I've got to go for my 4th pick. It's got to be a classic. Going back to the core box again, it's got to be not Rhino, but Claw. I actually really like Claw. No, was that your replacement for Mutagen for me?
Yeah, that was. It was going to be my switch up from Mutagen. Okay, you talk. I'm going to be looking.
Claw is Marvel Champions to me. And what I mean by that is he's a really good all-rounder. I used to use Mutagen for testing a lot, but I've kind of drifted more towards Claw in recent times. And another pick, which, spoiler alert, that's going to be my next one. But Claw hits you with minions, and at the start in the setup, you discard until you get a minion. So if you put modulars in to change up those minions, you instantly get cool interaction, unless it's like weapons runner, in which case, you're pretty happy with that anyway.
Yes.
And he's got all these interesting side schemes. He puts pressure on you from the beginning. But what is my favorite thing about him, which I don't want Claw to lose his unique kind of selling point, but it's so good I kind of hope they do it again, or maybe with a twist. But I love how he gets 2 boost cards. Now, any modular with boost effects gets really interesting because you're going to be hitting them so much more often. You've got, genuinely double the chance.
Yeah.
And that is fascinating to me. And what a lot of these cool, early scenarios have are less encounter cards than some of the more modern ones. So I'm always happy to throw an extra modular in Claw, and it won't change things up too dramatically. It will change them up dramatically, but in a good way. It won't unbalance the deck, all that kind of thing. He's just such a good all-rounder, has a bit of everything. He is, a really good deck testing villain, as I mentioned. So I'm a huge fan of Claw.
Yeah, Claw's fantastic. You took another pick from me. I'm still a little. Now I'm upset. Now I'm upset for your picks, but he's in that rotation. He comes out. He has a lot of variability on how difficult his start can be based on the mod sets. The boost icons, like you were saying, where you can throw like the Sinister Assault in there, where you're getting like 6 attack, or the boost effects. The core set in this game is so freaking good. The fact that 2 out of the 3 villains were drafted in the top 10, I think, is a testament to how good of a core set it is. I have nothing to say about your Claw pick. I'm still just silent begrudgeful. What's your 5th pick?
Well, originally, I actually had Ultron in my top 5, which
Perfect.
You went for. So I wasn't too worried because he was a little. I actually just gave Claw a slight edge over Ultron to me. But the core set, 2 of them made my top 5. So again, what a good product. I have to emphasize that. Now, I'm going to go with something a little different here. I'm going to go with one of the capstone final villains in a box. As someone who goes by the tag VillainTheory, I feel like I have to go as villainous as I can here. And who is one of the ultimate comic book villains, in my opinion, is Magneto. And this difficulty, you wanted him as well?
I did. Stop that. You get no more picks. You're done. I'm cutting you off of picks.
I don't need any more picks. That's 5. You know, this is how it felt when you took Storm from me, but I've just done it, you know, accidentally.
I'm actually
Or,
accidentally sharing my screen, and Villain's just looking at my next pick.
honestly, yes, I've actually taken all his notes as well, and that's what I'm reading. No, no. Magneto is my favorite end of a box villain, and his difficulty is higher than I think a lot of people like. But for me, it kind of hits a sweet spot. I think it's similar to Loki, but he takes a lot less time than Loki and is
Mm.
a lot less swingy than Loki. You know, sometimes Loki's just like, I'm gonna scheme, then I might, you know, hit you with a time stone, then I might scheme again, and then solo play, I've lost the 14th threat, you know, instantly. And you know, it happens. But I just feel like Magneto goes on for the right amount of time, and it's got a lot of, maybe I would say, more interesting mechanics going on. I like the magnetic counters. He's got really strong tempo, but you have strategies because I don't know. A bit like how Nelson was talking about Hela having that story going on. There's a story going on with Magneto. You have, you know, he's on Asteroid M, and you're trying to take it down, and you move through different stages, which lets you hurt him more, and eventually actually weakens him, which I really love. You know, whereas Hela grows stronger because of your efforts, you actually weaken Magneto, which I really like that, and it all fits in to the theme of the scenario. You know, the mechanically what happens, and for me that's awesome. Just love the difficulty. This is my normal deck tester, although, you know, if it's a bit more of a novelty or, you know, you're not like a too serious deck, I'm not too worried if it's not going to do that well against Magneto. But in general, you know, not as difficult as, say, you know, Venom Goblin or Ronan. Weird we haven't, you know, seen those often. But, you know, he is, you know, for me, just so fun and so dynamic. I think that is the word I would use for him as well.
Yeah, I think Magneto may be one of my most played villains, just because I've done a series where I took every single one of the X-Men up against Magneto. He is a fantastic deck tester. I think, you know, he's on that level of like mutagen formula where he's tough. He's very tough. He's going to stress a deck, and I really appreciate how that works. His mechanics are really interesting with the magnet counters. Every time he attacks you, it is not only a pretty big attack, right? He's got a nice attack stat, but also it's a third of another encounter card, because every 3 magnet counters you place on the main scheme, which he accrues by attacking, you discard cards until you get a magnetic card. So you're getting more encounter cards. He comes at you. He's tough. I really like the side scheme, side story that you were talking about. I will say that usually in these drafts I have 9 to 15 or so choices. This time I had 9, and I usually have choices that are left over. This time I'm out. We out of the 9 that we have chosen, we have picked every single one of them that was on my potential list. Yeah. And so I think to round out the draft pick, I was gonna go with Claw. I think Claw is, you know, a nice nice sub in for mutagen formula. And I guess my offensive side comes out here, and it's like, are all your picks the same? No, I'm just kidding. Because they're the same picks that I would take. But all of that to be said, I think at the risk of running something that I wouldn't consider a normal deck tester, I guess I have Juggernaut in there. I'm gonna take Red Skull. I think Red Skull to round out that 5th pick is my second favorite. I love Magneto. My second favorite capstone of the campaign villains, whereas like I think Ultron is my favorite like capstone of a box, whereas Red Skull came in that Rise of Red Skull campaign, that first campaign that we got, and he's all about side schemes. So at the beginning of the game, you create a side scheme deck where you take all of the side schemes, you shuffle them together in their own deck, and they're going to come out at a rate of about 1 per villain turn. Now, if you pop the scheme, there's other ways to get side schemes, but it's really cool to be able to, similar to Ultron, kind of build for Red Skull or really test the thwarting power of the deck that you have built against Red Skull. And some of the side schemes are beneficial when you take them out. You can go find allies. You can, get a little bit of a boon when you take them out. There are some side schemes that bring in some fairly nasty minions with the sleeper. And I think my favorite thing about Red Skull is kind of what you were saying about mod sets.
Yeah.
Where you can really force some interesting interactions with guaranteeing you're going to pull a side scheme. So now if you pull, I think the classic one that always my mind always goes to is the Doomsday chair, where if you put the side scheme that pulls out MODOK, now now you're hitting that twice every single side scheme deck pass, and you're getting this huge minion. And so there's a lot of ways to modulate Red Skull and guarantee that you're going to pull a side scheme, whether it's going to be galactic artifacts with like some really cool boons, or it's going to be something that's going to pull Madam Hydra, and we're very sad now. So that's going to round it out for me. Red Skull is number 5. How do you like the Red Skull pick?
I really like the Red Skull pick. You know, he didn't make my top 18, but I'm thinking maybe he should. I actually really like Red Skull. I'm really glad you mentioned the modular bit, because that is like my favorite thing about him. You know, Legions of Hydra, pretty nasty. Galactic Artifacts, really interesting. But somebody commented on one of my videos, I think it was yesterday, and they said something along the lines of they tried, I think it's Guerrilla Warfare, which I think is the mod set from Sinister 6.
Yeah.
Because it has, I think, 3 side schemes in there, but also the decoy stop your moving threat from side schemes, which is there's all sorts you can do with it, which is really, really, really cool. So,
that's really fun.
There's so much good stuff there. Yeah, it doesn't for me beat Magneto, you know, but it is a really good pick though. Such a good scenario.
Oh my goodness. Overall, how are you feeling about your list? Your top 5? You feel good about it?
Well, since I took most of your picks, I feel like I've got to feel pretty good about it. You know, if we both agree. I'm curious how people will react. How people, you know, would, you know, personally, you know, make it their, you know, top 5. But I think we've hit a lot of really good ones. I'm glad Hela was mentioned. I am glad, you know, Red Skull. I think, you know, everyone you've mentioned has also been really, really good. And Juggernaut even, you know, these are really great villains.
Yeah. No, I think we have come up with a really solid top 10 list here. I'm curious what is gonna pull out the W for the draft. So let us know in the comments. Who do you think drafted better? Who and like we're leaving it a little nebulous, right? Like it's not, you know, the hardest villains. It's not the most interesting villains. It's just the top 5. It's just the top 5 draft. So let us know in the comments how you interpreted that and who you thought drafted better. And bonus points if you pick me. Can I say that?
Oh, what?
Is that tampering with
the
voting
bonus
pool?
Points. No, you get double bonus points if you pick me. So,
oh,
you know,
okay.
yeah. These
Perfect.
points which you can definitely use.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, very much, Villain Theory. All of your information will be down in the video description, as well as, if I remember to put it after it's posted, episode 4 of Shadow the Cast, where we are revisiting the Guardian characters, talking about some of the new strategies and things that we can do with them. So make sure to check that out. Thank you so much for hanging out, Villain Theory, and we will see you around. Peace.
Yeah. Bye.